Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. I'm really excited because, I don't know how, I think you popped up in my feed, I want to say maybe a year ago, and I'd been looking for someone to have on the podcast that actually, there's plenty of, I don't know, I'll probably get in trouble with a lot of my friends, meatheads out there, but from a guy who's lifted weights since he was a kid and used to weigh 40 pounds heavier, but there's nobody who truly understands it, at least in my belief that I've seen. There are people, because I've been trained that way, but people out there who really advocate for I call it mobility versus stretching and bulking up, so to speak. So I'm really excited and I'm grateful. I know it took us a minute. You're really busy and looked like you had a terrific vacation, and I know you're recording like crazy.
I am. I'm excited to be here and talk about some of those things that you want to touch on, because I think there are so many misconceptions and people think that they need to do certain things, but they don't actually know why. And they don't actually have like the physiological understanding of like how our body works and functions. So I'm super excited to talk about it today. Be here.
Well, cool. So before we start, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about your business, because you have an interesting story. I think just at least for a few minutes, if you could share it with the audience, how you really transition it. You and I have never talked before other than Instagram messages and email, but it sounds like you were a traditional, from all my research and reading your website, a traditional physical therapist who really saw some problems with that. And then you've transitioned into this really cool online business that you've clearly gone all in, because I saw an app the other day and stuff like that. So could you share a little bit of that story?
Yes. So I guess I'll go back to my schooling and kind of how I got into it. So I was a business major in undergrad, and I worked at a software company for an internship. And I was like, I can't do this. I cannot sit behind a computer all day long. While I was in an undergrad, I was teaching fitness classes. So I loved doing that on the side, but I just kind of saw it as a hobby. I didn't see it as something that would be my career. And ultimately I decided this is my life. Like, I want to do what I'm actually interested in. So I went to physical therapy school. The whole time I was in PT school, I knew I wasn't going to be a traditional physical therapist. I just knew I was going to somehow, I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always started like side hustles and side businesses. So went to physical therapy school. After physical therapy school, I worked at a cash pay physical therapy clinic. And actually, I kind of just worked as a personal trainer. And at that clinic, I was dealing with my own chronic pain, my own overuse injuries. I was doing tons of what I would call show off yoga, where like you stretch yourself to the very breaking point and do all these cool tricks. And my body could do all of that, but my body felt horrible. And I was treating patients who felt the same. They were very fitness minded. Getting them to the gym was no problem, but their bodies felt like crap. And I just thought, there has to be a better way where we can be fit and work out and our joints don't have to feel like they're falling apart. We shouldn't have to get all of this body maintenance because of our workouts. Our workouts should build us up, not break us down. And so when I moved to North Carolina, my husband goes to Duke for his MBA. So we moved from Kansas City to North Carolina, and I opened my own physical therapy private practice here and was dealing with the same thing here. All these CrossFit people, all of people doing like more functional movement and runners and whatever, everybody had all of these issues from their workouts. And I just thought, this is so backwards. So my practice was going really well. I felt like I was waitlisted, and then the pandemic hit. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity for me to go online and actually, instead of just treating the symptom, which to me, the symptom was people's pain from their workouts, let's get straight to the cause, which is their workouts. And if we create a workout program that doesn't cause all those side effects, then these people won't have to be in their physical therapist's office every week, just trying to put themselves back together. So I started what was Levo, rebranded to Evlo, and we can talk about I love talking about business. So we can talk about business as much as you want in this interview, but yeah, we just launched an app. I just launched a podcast. It's called Fit Body, Happy Joints. I launched that 2 weeks ago. So life is good. Life is good right now. That's kind of my story.
So how did you, I mean, that's incredible. And I'm not going to hold it against you or your husband, only because I am a UNC Chapel Hill Tar Heel who has his MBA from there. And we got our coach from Kansas who,
Yep.
So I'm gonna let him off the hook. I'm only halfway joking, but
we could be on common ground there.
I saw a picture of him, I guess, watching like 3 basketball games. And
Yeah.
truthfully, I think the big joke, and you moved there to the Raleigh-Durham area. The truth is that other than basketball, like everybody gets along. I mean, my professors at UNC were from Duke and vice versa. They teach in different places in those places. But when it comes to basketball, man,
there's a big rivalry. I think I totally agree. It's like there's this mutual respect because everyone sees each other as academics. But then when it comes to sports, it's like all the wheels come off. It's very funny. But if it makes you feel any better, we hate Duke as well. Like my husband will never wear a Duke polo or like we hate Duke too. It's just because he's just here for school.
Well, we won't let the administrators hear that. But the people with Duke aren't bad. Actually, my grandfather and uncle went there, so not all bad. Awesome. But I'm joking. But how did you? That's an aside. How did you? Did you shut down your physical location and now doing it all online?
Yes. So I was renting space and just operating as my kind of in my own practice. And when the pandemic hit, the space completely shut down. So I was out of a job. It was sort of a panic moment, as for a lot of people all around the world. And because my husband was in school, so he didn't have an income. So it was kind of like scrambling to try to figure out how to make this work. And, like, as you know, starting a business, sometimes it takes months before you're making a profit. And, not that it's all about money, but when you're the sole breadwinner, it kind of is. So that was the first few months. I had a blast doing it, but they were very difficult. And we're finally at a point where we're making a profit. We're seeing the things coming together, and it's a lot more fun now. But the first few months were very, very stressful.
Yeah. So a few things, just so our listeners, the model that you were using is that you were in an existing physical therapy place and you effectively rent a room, so to speak, very much like a barber or a hairdresser rents a chair. Was that the business model?
Exactly. And I was treating people's injuries. I wasn't doing fitness with them. So they would come to me for back pain and I would treat their injuries from like a rehab standpoint. Whereas now my model is all online and it's fitness classes. So it's workouts. It's not treating pain or treating injuries or anything like that. So it's a completely different model.
And you were doing a revenue share, just like a hairdresser or a barber, in the sense that you, I guess you had a set fee per month to rent the room, and then you did a revenue share with that practice.
No, luckily it was just rent, which is really nice. Like and the person that I rented from was super generous and it was very affordable. So yeah, no revenue share, just rent, which was really nice.
So, and I want to get to the fitness, but you've done something, you mentioned that you're profitable, and a few things you mentioned that I want to comment. One is being in business is about money. I think this is something that I'm only taking the opportunity because I think we as humans, creators, entrepreneurs, business owners, sometimes feel like there's this perception about money that's bad. There's nothing bad about money. There's nothing bad about making a lot of money. That is a cultural shift that someone is trying, or a small group of people are trying to shift, but there is nothing wrong with wealth. And we should feel good about making money. So I'll say that start.
I could not agree with you more. And you know, as someone who is, you know, I think you can also be, it can be a both and, like you can be altruistic and want to change the world, and you can also want to make a lot of money doing it. And that's a shift that I've had to make in my own mind over the last year, starting this business, where I'm like, I've been so used to trading time for money as a physical therapist, and getting into a model where it's scalable and I'm not trading time for money anymore has been, you almost feel this layer of guilt, like, oh my gosh, I'm not working hard enough to like get this amount of money. But it's like, but I know, like I can actually change so many more people's lives, and I can also make a lot of money doing it. So I totally thank you for saying that. For all the, especially all the PTs that are listening, I think we have this thing where like we have to trade time for money, and we can't make over, you know, 100 grand, or else like, you know, it's ridiculous. I totally agree. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, you're welcome. I take the opportunity to say it often, because there's this thing like, oh, well, there's nothing bad about money. And by the way, I will tell you, from a guy who created there's this, I don't even like the word passive income, because that degrades what we've created. It's that we've created a long tail on our product that allows us to collect, and it becomes highly addictive. Like, there was nothing more than I like to get these emails. I get them today for our newsletter. Like, hey, you just made $299. And when I created my first business, I had the same thing. My wife has a dog agility side hustle training facility, and she's getting these emails. And this is, you know, she used to not really be as I'm going to say aggressive. I was joking with her last night, but you start to get emails and you're like, hey, I just made $25. Hey, I just made $25. Like, that's really makes you feel good.
Yes. And it's not like you're not putting value into the world to earn that money. You're still putting value out. I think it's just a shift that you don't have to be slaving away every second to be making money. There is no better feeling, I totally agree, than waking up and checking your email and seeing that you made money in your sleep. There is no better feeling.
Yeah. I mean, it's great, right?
It doesn't mean you don't deserve it, or you don't it doesn't mean that you don't deserve it. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, people have to get past.
Yeah, you'll get past it. You deserve it.
Working on it.
you deserve it. And in fact, you should get more of it and make a ton of it, because that means that you're solving a real problem for people that they're willing to pay for. And there's just nothing wrong with that. So I wanted to comment on that. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, you're already profitable, and you said something like, oh, sometimes it takes months to get profitable. I just want to, from a guy who, I'm wearing a sweatshirt, so you can't see it, or whatever the shirt is, as long as you pull over, is I got a lot of scars on my back that says sometimes it can take years. So with that, how have you, because I looked at your Instagram, you started Instagram in August, I think it's August 26th of 2019, which maybe is a time when you started to do Instagram, but then this pandemic, you create this shift. How have you been able to create this following? And it looks to me mostly through Instagram, maybe word of mouth, and maybe an email list that you have. Can you just take a few minutes? Like, how have you done that, Shannon? Because that's incredible.
Well, thank you. It's funny because the first, I would say, year, like, was a slow grind. Like, I felt like I was posting a lot. I wasn't getting very much traction. I think between like August of when I started my Instagram and the following August of 2020, I think like I had maybe 8,000 followers at like this last August. And then from this last August to now, which is what, like, you know, about, what is that, 8 months, 9 months, I have almost, I think I checked today, as like 27,000 followers. So most of my growth has happened within the last like six or so months, like 6 or 8 months. So I'm not really sure. I mean, I am sure. I think the first thing that I did was I cleaned up my messaging, and I understood my customer, and I understood how to speak to them in a way that wasn't so complicated. So I think that was the main thing that I did, is like, I started to understand them. I talked to them all the time. I was in my DMs, I was in my emails, I was interacting with my customers literally on a daily basis and figuring out, getting inside their brains. And I changed my messaging from exercise that prevents injuries to the more results driven like messaging, which is fit bodies, happy joints. As soon as I did that and people understood more of my messaging and understood the result they were going to get from my product, the following like exploded. I also took advantage of reels. So like reels were really popular a few months ago, and the algorithm was really favoring them. So I was posting reels like every day, or not every day, but only like 3 times a week, but still. And then also doing Instagram ads. So I have an ad that I've been doing for the last 8 months because it works really well. It converts really well. And with Instagram, do you run Instagram ads?
No, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, as you know, for the listener, in case listeners don't know, you can really funnel in the type of person that you're trying to attract in your ad. So I can dial in exactly who I'm trying to attract. And even if they don't click on my ad and go through my funnel, they maybe might click on my profile and follow me that way. So I think those 3 things that I've done is dialing in my messaging, taking advantage of what's popular on Instagram. So like the reels, and then also doing Instagram ads is really how I've been able to grow in the last 8 months.
And is that a lead magnet that you're moving them towards on the ad?
Yes. So I do, for me, I've found that video ads convert better. And so it's literally just like a selfie of me talking. And I say something similar, like a similar message, like your workouts don't have to break you down. My philosophy is that you can, It's, a 7-second video, and it's free. It's 6 free classes. So they swipe up, their email is right there. They put in their email. There's not a lot of copy. There's not a lot of words. They put in their email, and then boom, they get the 6 free classes in their email. From there, they are subscribed to an email sequence of like 4 emails over 10 days with education. There's another bonus workout in there. And then the final email on the 10th day is the invitation to join the membership. So that's kind of my funnel that's been working pretty well. Interestingly, I think that like, although that funnel works, I think what works the most is getting people warm on Instagram and talking to the camera on Instagram and showing my face and being maybe a little bit more vulnerable and making people learn that I'm a real person and sharing some of my life, and them getting to know me and promoting my product that way. And then when they're warm and they trust me and they understand my philosophy, then they're more likely to join my membership. So
I really appreciate you explaining that and sharing that, because you've done a great job. One question, I got a whole bunch of questions, and maybe this is a transition. Well, congratulations, first of all, because I've watched you do it just from observing. I haven't gotten your ads. I won't click on it because it'll cost you $1, $2, or $3, or whatever your customer acquisition cost is. But and by the way, is your acquisition cost within $5, or is it 5 to 10, or do you?
Since we just switched platforms, I don't have the like conversion. I have the cost per click, which is like 77 cents. I think I just checked it yesterday.
That's really good.
But that's the click. So that's like them just swiping up on it. So the cost, like from that to them joining my membership, I'm not sure what the cost is because since we just changed platforms, I don't have enough data yet. But
are you using Kajabi now?
I was using Kajabi, and I just switched to like a white labeled platform where it's just all like branded. So it's not on like one of those platforms.
Got you. Yeah. So this is maybe our transition. Thanks for sharing all that and really good work. So I'm interested because I keep track of what t-shirt or sweatshirt I wear on all the podcasts, because we've been doing 3 and we're moving to 5. And I just think if we're going to put these on YouTube, which we are, then you do that. So I noticed that you have a different outfit on possibly 3 times a day. And I'm wondering how you do that and where are you getting these clothes? Like, are you sponsored? Do you coordinate this? Like, it's clear to me that it's not random. I mean,
oh, that's so funny. You've been the first person to call me out on that. That is so funny. Yeah, I mean, so here's what happens. I teach in the morning and I wear an outfit. I'm less conscious about what I'm wearing while I'm teaching. I'm more interested in the like how I'm teaching and what I'm teaching. But when I am filming like my content, either on stories or for like content on my Instagram, I am conscious of what I'm wearing because I think that I want to look put together and clean and professional, and I want to look the part. And I know how important that is. So yeah, I will sometimes change like 3 times a day, depending on what I'm doing. And I batch my content. So like I'll plan all my stuff and then I'll film all my stuff all at once. And so a lot of times I will change in between in the same day. Like I'll change 3 or 4 times just to like film new content. So that's so
All right.
funny
Well,
that you noticed
that was like my zinger question for today. Because I was like, how is
Singer.
Shannon doing this? Like she has new top on. I mean, what is going on? And one other business thing, you are, just for listeners, because people ask me, and you made a comment when we jumped on, you're like, oh, wow, well, you got a whole setup there. I'm like a total geek and want that, but it looks like you're recording your stuff, which you can on an iPhone 12 at 4K, which is basically movie quality. You're doing a lot of this with not a red camera. Is that right?
I have no camera. All I use for all my classes, all my content is my phone.
Okay. So there
And
you go, people. Like Shannon, you can imagine, and you're a business person and entrepreneur yourself, and I'm sure PT people come to you like, Shannon, how do you do it? I got to go research this new Sony camera or this red. You do. If you're listening out there, you do not need all this stuff. In fact, I'll be honest. I'm building a studio out back right now, recording studio, and I'm going to do all my videos with this 12 at 4K with a Rode mic because it works.
why spend a bunch of money on a camera if your users are not going to be able to tell the difference?
Yeah,
I totally agree. The phone,
I think you're a testament. I just want to say this, that you are already making money. You're profitable on a subscription business, and you're doing it with a phone, a laptop, and earbuds.
and I'm doing it literally in my living room. Like people are like, think they need a fancy studio, and I am doing it. I'll just show you my backdrop here. It's kind of messy because I just filmed. You guys get to see behind the scenes. This is what my classes look like. Literally in front of my TV that's not mounted. There's a wine little carrier there, and yeah, like a crappy bookshelf. Like you do not need to get fancy.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and I saw an Instagram story from you that you showed your boxes. I guess you were feeling some guilt that everybody thought you were perfect, but I think that was good. That was good. I already knew it because if I like showed you around in here, there's like a dog blanket on the floor there, that, so that, because I saw it when we were getting ready, I was like, I can't put that in there, but you can make things, frame things look really good, right? And
Yes.
you've done a great job. So let's talk about fitness. One of the things or fitness or mobility, or what is the right nomenclature that you're using now for this whole like lifting fitness? I don't know.
Yeah. I think I really prioritize biomechanics over anything because I do think that the forces you are putting through your body are important. And I don't think that is studied or appreciated or known about in the industry. I think people think that, there's a certain like number of popular exercises that everyone should do. And, a lot of those popular exercises don't place force through your body in an appropriate way that will lead to the strongest, most fittest body with the least amount of joint degeneration. So yeah, I would call it probably biomechanics, but with that when you have happier joints and a stronger body, you will have better mobility. And we can get into that. We can get into like why that happens, why you have tightness and all of that stuff. But just to kind of start there.
Yeah. So let's talk about it, because I sent you a video and I do all these like mobility exercises, and you can hear, which I've been taught, and I could be wrong, they're bone spurs or something that effectively they build up, and you can hear them, and you got to keep doing these mobility, but it's very different than stretching. Is that right?
Yes. Yes. So I think we can back up, because I think when I explain this, it can help people understand exactly what stretching is doing and what it's not doing. So tightness is, and you probably already know this, but just for like the listener, tightness is a mechanism from your nervous system to keep you safe. So when your nervous system senses instability or a bone spur or a ligament tear or something is wrong inside your joint, it tightens up the tissues around that joint in order to protect you from going into a range of motion that could injure that structure. So, so when we think about tightness in that way, when we stretch a muscle that is trying to tighten up and protect you, we are potentially overriding our nervous system's natural protective mechanism and potentially opening you up to vulnerabilities that your nervous system's trying to protect you from. So I have a lot of issues with stretching, and this is an unpopular opinion, and I don't stretch, and I don't recommend my clients stretching because of that, because we don't have x-ray vision and we don't know or understand exactly why our muscles or our tissues are tight in a certain range of motion. So do we want to bypass that protective mechanism and assume that we know better than our nervous system and stretch into ranges of motion where we're then opening ourselves up to vulnerability? So I like to think of stretching as more of, you have to utilize an external force, like pulling your leg with a strap or gravity or using your body weight to bring your joint into a position that it can't go if you were to let go of that external force. So for example, doing the splits and using your body weight to like push your legs into the splits is different than how much you could just actively lift your leg up towards your chest if you were in standing. So that's kind of the difference between flexibility, which is using an external force, and mobility, which is using your muscular system to actively bring your joint into a certain position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think for listeners, it's really important because when I first learned about all of this, and we've been taught, I mean, this comes from high school sports, right? Like there's all this stretching stuff that goes on, and there's not a lot of discussion. You sort of, then you carry it through your adulthood and you don't realize that you could be injuring yourself. But when I carry a lot of weight, which probably comes from all the bodybuilding in those days, my back will get tight. And I met this guy and he's like, well, you need to do mobility exercises with your hips and your back, and you need to rotate it and it'll go away. And I was like, yeah, man, I don't think so. I think you got to stretch it. He's like, no. And he was trained in Russia, and he walked me through this thing. And sure enough, what your body really wants to know, which is what you've said, is that you can move so it can stop tightening that muscle. Is that right?
Exactly. Exactly. When your nervous system feels safe, it will give you all of the mobility that your structure can tolerate. So let's say you do have bony spurs in your wrist. Do you want your wrist going into all of this full extension if you're getting these bones rubbing over your structures and causing more damage? Probably not. But if you move actively through your wrists, improve synovial fluid, improve the connection of your brain to those neurons in your hand, maybe your brain feels like it has more information over how to move your wrist, and maybe the tightness decreases a little bit and you have all of the mobility that your structure will allow for. So, yeah, I mean, I do agree with what he said about like doing mobility drills will help reduce tightness. But I think that the missing factor is that you cannot out mobility or out massage or out foam roll or out stretch inappropriate forces through your workouts. So if you are wearing down your body in your workouts and causing all this compression in your spine and causing a bunch of shearing force in your discs, no amount of mobility can undo that force. It's like hitting a hammer on a piece of wood, and the hammer is your workouts, and you create all these damages in the wood. but then sanding it out and expecting it to look perfect again, and the sand is like the sand with the sandpaper would be like your mobility drills. It's like, yes, it might make it feel a little bit better, but it still isn't going to undo the damage from your workouts.
Well, I think that's the key part why I was really excited that you agreed to come on today, because I had all that. And I think, first of all, let's just talk about crawl, walk, run, because the listeners probably are still at stretch. And we got to get them to, you're not going to stretch, you're going to do mobility. But the missing part is exactly what you said, which when I watched, and I've watched your videos, I mean, I'll be honest, at first I was like, that's why I watched for a long time to sort of figure this out, because you were doing tricep exercises and you're doing a chest exercise with your back on the ground on that mat that you showed us, and not going all the way down on the fly. And if you're a bodybuilder, like that is the, what do you call it? Like the thing, right? Like that's how you feel like you're really getting that pump. And I was like, okay, well, I'll do this thing that this Dr. Shannon says on this Instagram thing. And sure enough, you can literally feel that you're not jacking your shoulder in the wrong way. So it's got to be this combination.
Yeah, exactly. And like, we could break down individual exercises like from a biomechanical standpoint, but I don't want to confuse the listeners. But I think that, going through larger range of motion isn't always necessarily the best for an individual's body, because if they're going through the range of motion and they're extending their arm all the way back here, but then they're also internally rotating to try to compensate for that lack of really arm extension, or being able to, for those that aren't listening, like in a bench press, when you bring your arms all the way down below the level of the bench, if they don't have that active ability of their shoulder and their shoulder caves in, they all of a sudden are probably going to get some like clunking in the front side of the shoulder, potentially impingement syndrome, potentially causing more inflammation and less ability for your muscles to contract. So although that's not like a bad thing to feel the fullest stretch of your pecs, and you will get better benefit that way, it's not always the safest for the masses. I think that you have to have a deep understanding of your body and what to look for and what to feel for in order to kind of go to those end ranges of motion. So that's why I do tend to, I think that you can get great results by just staying a little bit smaller and just playing it on the safe side. Unless you're like a professional bodybuilder, then you will want to like push to those extremes a little bit more, but yeah.
Well, and I also think people, for whatever reason, don't quite grasp the fact that if you're going to try to model a male bodybuilder, or even some of these women fitness things, I'll go out on the edge here, or a ledge, and say they're using drugs, and they're using, and they
Thank you.
This is a fact. Like,
yes,
it's a fact. I mean, they're using drugs, and if you really knew them, they'd admit it to you. And they're using drugs that compensate the joints with things like Winstrol, Deca. I mean, I keep going down the list here, that are lubing the joints to get them through that. But as soon as they're done, it's a major problem. So I think there's that perception. And look, I was a kid who wanted to be big, and you get it in your head. You're like, oh, I'm going to take all the. I don't know how you feel about this, Shannon, but I tell people they shouldn't take, other than vitamins. I do take some vitamins that I think work. I don't know if they work. I saw the Netflix thing, like maybe they don't work, but the placebo works, okay, for me. But as it relates to all this other supplement crap, just eat some real food. How do you feel about that?
I mean, off the record, because I do try to stay in my lane, because the nutrition, I will say, is not my formal like education. So I try not to like give anybody advice on that. But my opinion and how I treat it in my own body is I've learned to eat the food instead of blend it and drink it and all of that stuff. I totally agree. Like, I've heard that from a functional medicine doctor who advised, I was doing protein smoothies like every single day. And she said, eat your protein, just eat it. Like, eat the good, clean protein, whatever that is, instead of blending it. So yeah, I from a personal standpoint, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, the results speak for themselves. All you gotta do is look at people who eat healthy like yourself.
Yes.
Like you can see it works. I mean, I'm not saying I'm the greatest specimen, but for a guy who's middle age, right? Well, I don't know what middle age, 40,
Yeah, you
50,
look freaking great.
right? Like it clearly does something. That's all I
Yes.
know. And I used to take all those shakes. Trust me. I've
Yes.
taken every shake known to man. I don't want to go off on the nutrition thing, but I appreciate you sharing that. For our listeners, what would be the best example you could give that we could describe in a podcast? People on YouTube will obviously be able to see you do it, but what would be an example of an exercise that a lot of people do that you could describe on how it would be done better by following your method of not loading this joint? And basically, I think the other thing is when we say ruining your joints, what we're talking about is putting undue load on those joints that cause arthritis, pain, bone spurs, I don't know, 6 other things that you know. But I'd love for you to give that example of like that primary exercise.
Exactly. I definitely will. And I think if I could reframe your question just a little bit, because I think maybe it'll help me give a really good example of maybe not an exercise, but a muscle. Like if we could, okay, so perfect.
That works. That's better. Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I'm not, that's why I like to talk to people, Shannon, who are way smarter than I am, which you are. So there you go.
No. That is a very, very common question is like, how do I change this one exercise to fit my body better? And I like to say, how do we choose an exercise to fit your body instead of fitting your body to an exercise?
I love that.
It's totally backwards, but I do think that it's like a subtle but important shift. Okay. So let's take the glutes because everyone loves to know how to load the glutes effectively.
Well, let's talk about where the glutes are because some people actually might not know that. So where are the glutes?
Thank you. I know I get carried away and then I like start talking in all these technical terms. Okay. So your glutes are your butt muscles. You're the big butt muscle and you have a few others, but it's the primary one. So the most popular or one of the most popular exercises for your glutes is, what do you think it is? Just curious.
I mean, doing the exercise on the back of a bench with a straight bar across your hip and rotating your hip. Is that what the glute is? Or is it hamstring curls?
Straight bar. Like a hip ab, like bringing your legs out.
Oh, they go like this and they sit on the bench and then they put the bar, not a dumbbell, but.
That's a hamstring curl.
No, they're laying on their back and they rotate their hips like their glutes. I don't know, but anyway, see, I'm not the expert. So I don't know clearly I don't know what the answer to your question is. So what is the
trick question? I think that squats are like one of the most popular, like,
I just have to say this. So if you're listening to the podcast, if you could have seen Shannon's face looking at me doing this, thinking, what in God is this guy even talking about? That's pretty much the look that we got there. Oh
my gosh. No,
yes, squats. Okay, let's go with squats.
You were perfect. I hear what much weirder shit on a day-to-day basis. So you were fine. Okay. So a squat, which is basically squatting down like you were going to sit in a chair and lifting back up. A lot of people will put a bunch of weight on their back, like a barbell, and to increase the load to their glutes. So it's so fascinating. I can break down, and other people who understand physics can break down these exercises and calculate how much force is going through the glute, or how much force the glute has to generate in order to lift you out of that exercise. So this is so fascinating. And I did this on my Instagram once, and I calculated the forces. So there's that exercise. Let's say you're holding 40 pounds. Let's say you're holding a 40-pound, either barbell or dumbbell or whatever, and you're doing squats. There is something like 2 or 3 times more force to your glutes when you choose a step up, like, so you're like stepping up on a chair, like with one leg, so just with body weight, than there is in a squat. So let me back up. we've got two exercises, a squat with 40 pounds and a step up with just your body weight. There is something like 2 times more work to your glute in a step up than there is in a squat. Why is this? It's because what's called the moment arm, or the magnification to your hip, is longer in a step up, and you're lifting more of your body weight in a step up versus in a squat. You have both of your legs working. So it divides the work by 2. Now, the problem with a squat is that because the magnification to the glute isn't that much, you have to hold a lot of weight. And when you're holding a lot of weight, you're getting that additional compression down through your spine. So if we can choose exercises that actually load the glute more and have zero compression through the spine, like in a body weight step up, why would we not choose that exercise? Because in a step up, you can get more work through the glute and less stress through the spine. So I think that's just like an example of, and listen, anyone that loves squats, please don't come after me, because that's like saying that you should never do them.
I think it's fine, because my next question is, what you said, and you sparked something I'm going to ask you about the individual, how doing individual exercises actually increases the load with the same weight than doing them even single dumbbells together. But and
yes.
that was one of the things that I had caught from some of your stuff. But
yes.
On the squat, as it relates to loading the quad, is that true also for the quad and the hamstring?
Yes. So a squat, depending on how far your knee is traveling forward, so how far your knee is coming to approach going over your toes or over your toes. In most squats, the quad is challenged very little, because there's not a very long moment arm, meaning there's not very much magnification to the quads. I did the same thing, comparing a squat using 40-pound weights and what I call a matrix move. It's technically called a reverse Nordic curl. It's when you're on your kneeling and your hips and shoulders are straight and you're leaning back. And it almost looks like you're defying gravity. So that's why I call it the matrix move. But you're leaning back and then you're coming back up. So I compared a squat using heavy weights, like 40 pounds or whatever, and a reverse Nordic curl using body weight. The reverse Nordic curl, again, challenges the quads. I think, I cannot remember the numbers off the top of my head, but something like 3 times more. And you're just using your body weight. So again, zero compression through the spine, more work through the quads. So that's how you can start to get better results with less joint wear and tear, is when you start to apply physics to exercise and start to take a harder look at these exercises that are popular. Like, are they really worth it? Just because they're popular and just because someone once said that they're really great, are they really doing what they think we're doing? And can we choose an exercise that is healthier on your body?
I think that's a great example. It's just hard for me.
Go to my Instagram and I broke it down. Maybe that will like help, like conceptual. Again, it's kind of hard to describe without drawing it out. Like I do these stick figures.
Oh no, I get it. I'm more thinking to myself, how many years I've been doing it wrong. And so I'm going to ask this question, and I think we got to answer it for men and for women listening, because, well, you'll understand why. So what you just described in that reverse Nordic curl.
Yes.
Will that build muscle?
Yes.
And for a man, it would gain size?
Yes. For now, men and women, you would gain size. Yes.
So I was hesitating, because here's what all the women are going to say. And you know this, as soon as you said it, is my wife going to come storming in here and be like, I don't want a big muscle. So can you talk about that? Because that really is one of the myths. Yes. And one of the reasons I think women don't use weights when they should be using weights to increase bone structure and strength.
Yes. Thank you for bringing this up. And we should put this to bed here now. So first off, it is how easily you gain size is largely genetically predispositioned. So some people will be able to gain muscle faster and more easily than other people. It has a lot to do with your hormone balance and just how your body adapts. So for someone like me, it's very difficult for me to gain muscle. It's always been difficult for me to gain muscle. It happens very, very slowly and progressively. And I am just not predispositioned to get bulky. Like, it's just not going to be in the cards for me. Now, there are women that might be more predispositioned to that. Those women probably know that. They probably know that they are more predispositioned to gain size quickly. However, I totally think that we should stop being afraid of gaining muscle size, because the more muscle you have, the leaner your body will become. Muscle is one of the most calorically expensive tissues in our body. In other words, it requires a lot of energy from our metabolism in order to stay alive. So 1 pound of muscle burns like something like 50 to 100 calories per day just resting. So just to keep you alive, your muscle burns a lot of calories. So if you add like 5 pounds of muscle to your frame in a year, by the end of that year, you could be burning 500 more calories a day just sleeping, just on your couch, just driving in your car. So like at first, I think people get afraid because they start to see their muscles grow. Maybe they aren't adapting nutrition, but it really does create an environment where your metabolism increases. You have to rely less on like these intense, highly repetitive calorie burning workouts that can destroy your joints, and more on your body to keep you lean and healthy. So really that is the recipe for success. I went into it in nitty gritty detail in my podcast actually last week. So if anybody wants to like learn like more of the nitty gritty behind that, it's called Fit Body Happy Joints. You can go look at that. But I do think that women need to stop being afraid of gaining muscle, because it truly is the secret and really what our priority should be for both men and women.
And you can gain that muscle, 5 pounds of muscle, which could lead to losing 5 pounds of fat, which and I think the other, just because you do that, I don't say I know. I think I know that women will say, well, I don't want to look like I'm ripped in the magazine. Trust me. Like you're not at 7% body fat. You're not going to look like that. You're going to look toner maybe, but you're not going to have veins and striations. That is like super hard. I mean, it's hard to get there naturally. Well, I should say it the other way. It's hard to even get there on drugs.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, truthfully, it's super hard.
Yes, it is not very, very, unless your genetics are just super freaky. It is very difficult. I mean, you have to be in the gym for 3 hours a day. You have to be eating a ton of the right stuff. It is very difficult. And trust me, I would love to be that way. And I am trying, like seriously, like I am lifting, I'm working out and I just do my program, but it is hard, like for most women to get that way. So I think that fear is a little bit antiquated, and I see that going away, and I hope it continues to start to go away. But thank you for bringing that up. I think that's super important for women to understand.
Yeah, I think there's been some messaging about this, but I think whatever other messaging that women read, whether that's through magazines, some websites, or whatever it is, it just counteracts it. So I want to talk a little bit about metabolism, which really you touched on as it relates to burning calories and your muscle, and the shift that I read from you, shifting your mindset from thinking that you're doing the exercise to burn calories, which if you're above heart rate zone 2, all you're burning is glucose at that point that you will refuel, or if you don't, you'll be dead the rest of the day. And exercising in these heart rate zones to build a body that burns calories longer.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? Because I totally just paraphrased, I think, or not probably well, what I read in one of your posts, which I think is really important.
Yes. Well, I think that people choose exercises often because they feel hard and they are tiring systemically, which means like all over your body, you're just like fatigued afterwards. And I think that there is a big difference between just burning calories. It's similar to like getting stuck in mud and spinning and flooring it and spinning your wheels. And you are utilizing energy, you're utilizing fuel, you're going through your tank, but you're not going anywhere. So it's similar in that way. A lot of fitness modalities are like that. You're like burning calories, and in the moment you're burning calories, but it's a short-term payoff because you're not actually building your tissues to set you up for fitness results in the long term. So the way you really want to exercise in order to stimulate muscle growth, and let me say that muscle is not built in your workouts, it's built in your recovery. So you have to recover properly. But the way to really stimulate is to tap into what's called, again, I talk about this more on the podcast, but we'll get into it briefly, stimulate what's called your glycogen stores in your muscles. And your glycogen stores are so when you eat food, the carbohydrates in your food are converted to glucose, like you said, and you might use that glucose to go throughout the motions of your day. Whatever is left is then sent to the liver and to the muscles to be glycogen. And the liver uses this glycogen to power your heart, power your digestive system, power your respiratory system, other systems in your body. The glycogen in your muscles is used, almost stored as an emergency source for when your muscles need to contract very hard. So when you lift a heavy thing, those glycogen stores are tapped in order to fuel that muscular contraction. So what happens is when you never tap into those glycogen stores and you're never intensely working your muscles, the glycogen stores tend to build up because you eat, the same process happens, more glycogen goes into the muscle, that glycogen overflows and then is converted into fat. So if you are not intensely contracting your muscles, you're never emptying those glycogen stores, and that glycogen is just building up and converting into fat. So the way, again, you start to empty those glycogen stores is to exercise and recruit your muscles in a intense way. And I think people think intensity has to mean like plyometrics and box jumps and sprints and all of that kind of thing. And intensity can just be like a really focused, heavy chest press and just really tapping into those muscles. Intensity can be a reverse Nordic curl going really slow. I mean, you are gassed by the end of that. But I think like a lot of women, I'll speak to women specifically, like to do like Pilates and more bar, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but they might not be tapping into those glycogen stores and emptying those glycogen stores, which truthfully will set your metabolism up for a long term. You will improve your metabolism over the long term by more strong muscular contractions. Did I lose you?
No.
Okay, good.
Because I think that flows into your hair dryer test, right?
Yeah, did you see that today?
I did. Yeah, what
Yes.
is the hair? I actually needed to read it twice. Maybe I got off caffeine completely. And
wow.
yeah, I decided
How you doing?
I'm doing 500% better than I was, honestly.
You mean while you were drinking the caffeine, you're
Well,
500%
like,
better
so
now?
yeah. So here's how I would describe it. I will tell you that I've had to adjust, and I'm probably, I don't want to use the word crazy, meticulous as you are about fitness and all that, mainly because I do lift, but I ride my bike 150, 200 miles a week. So if you're going to do that, you got to have you got to have your shit together. Like,
yes, totally.
You got to be. So what I've noticed though on my so I'm watching, feeling everything, like what I look like in the morning, how much water am I retaining, all that stuff. I have noticed that the caffeine was definitely burning fat for me without having to do things, because, you're in fight or flight as soon as you start taking that caffeine, you're jacked up.
Yes.
I am much more level during the day. My head is way clearer, meaning I don't need to ride 3.5 hours to get the clear head. I've got a clear head when I wake up. I can concentrate on my poor Gia, operations manager for Build a Business, but like I can crank out work like nobody's like I can concentrate much more. Getting off of it took me 5 weeks. I think I was doing 5 cups of tea, which is whatever, probably 50 milligrams of, and I went 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So 1 week.
Wow.
And it was hell, and it was, and then that week afterwards, I think my wife would tell you, Yvette would tell you I was probably a little edgy, even Gia who talks to me. But I feel way better. And I've saved time. I don't have to make the tea. I don't have to go to McDonald's to get these iced teas. I'm not taking stevia, which is, I know, natural. I still think it was affecting me in some way that, I mean, Shannon,
Yes.
I'm like ordering that stuff from Amazon. Like it's going out of style, right? So,
well, I think like, and again, I don't know, like, don't like fact check me or do fact me, but like, I think
nobody's fact checking you, Shannon. You gotta, I think social media has made you so sensitive because you probably get all these DMs,
so
negative comments about some BS that your hair wasn't right or that your outfit didn't work or that you don't know what you're talking about. I will just tell you from a guy who's been in social media since 1996 that you got to put that out of your head. But anyway.
That is true. And it takes some getting used to, because I definitely have had a few haters that have, like, it bothers me. But yeah, about the stevia, like, I just have a feeling that stevia hits your brain in the same way sugar does, in the sense that it's a very refined substance and it, goes straight to your brain just the way, sugar does. It's almost like that instant dopamine hit. So I do wonder if, like, that's why I've never really understood stevia. So anybody that's listening to this and does understand it, send me a message and explain, because I would love to know.
Well, no. So what you've said, I actually did study it, and I know that it's going to sound really geeky, but I do read academic journals on the weekends. I have a psychology degree.
I do too.
So I did study it, and it does trigger. That's why people who drink Diet Coke, beyond the fact that it's got like formaldehyde and 60 other things, of which I'm not throwing stones, because a long time ago I used to drink Diet Coke and I used to drink Diet Mountain Dew, which will jack you up like nobody's business. But it will also rot your teeth. It will probably eat your insides out. Luckily,
it's like meth. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah, it is like meth. But I mean, it works. But it triggers, your brain doesn't know the difference, in the sense your cells understand the difference, but your gut and your brain don't. So effectively, that's why people are drinking Diet Coke are overweight. And there's just nothing you can do. So when I did get off of caffeine, I went and got, recently, I have 4 weeks till my next one. I got a DEX scan. I got VO2 max, metabolism analysis. And they do this thing, maybe you've done it before, where they actually draw your body and it just make you sick. like
really?
The outline. I do not, the lady prepared me. She's like, look, I know you're crazy fitness dude, and even bodybuilders who come in here hate this, but it gives you the true measurements of your arms, your legs, your stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I think COVID, I think I'm bulletproof, Shannon, but COVID, the scale tells the truth. Like, I was at 22% body fat, which has scared the living daylights out of some of my friends because they think I'm lean.
Yes. Isn't that crazy? That surprises me. You're at 22%. Wow.
And you can see my six pack, but here's why. And here's what this is really important. I think all the things that you're saying about exercise or mobility and what do you call it? Biomechanics. Biomechanics is also important for losing weight. And I know we're going a little bit off topic, but we already went there. So we better address it, or I'll get 50 emails that say you left me hanging. But everybody stores fat in different places. And you have to get that body fat in one area of your body low enough to trigger that. And I actually carry a lot of it in my legs and my butt. And that's where it is. So until I get down, and I know, like, and it happens quickly. I know when I'm there, then the fat from the other place. So disappears.
Yes. Well, I think that on that same vein, people think that they can target fat in their body by doing exercises. You would not believe, Brandon, how many people send me messages and say, I cannot get rid of the fat in my inner thighs. What exercises can I do? And it's like, it's no one's fault. I don't mean to like shame anybody
No,
at
and it's
all.
nobody. It's just to be clear to say that it is not your fault. You have been informed with the wrong information. And I'm going to say it, from marketers on the internet that want you to believe this crap that is completely wrong.
I mean, I'm actually wanting to do a podcast about how there are so many jacked up things that have been fed into our mind by consumerism and marketing that have like messed up the fitness world, like totally messed us up. But that's one of them. And you cannot lose fat by moving a certain area of your body more. Fat loss happens systemically in that your body utilizes fat stores when it's in a calorie deficit or it needs that fat as energy. So if you hold on to fat in your butt or in your hips or in your inner thighs or whatever, the more inner thigh exercises you do might make that muscle stronger, but it won't actually burn the fat in that area. So again, back to genetics play a big role in where you hold fat. And so I think that that's a big misconception, is that that and that exercise that you need to do a bunch of exercise to lose weight. That drives me crazy too, because weight loss often comes, nutrition is like 80, I want to say almost 90% of the equation. I mean, your workout is a very, very small piece of the equation as far as fat loss. So let me just say that, because people are like, I want to lose weight. Can I join your program? I'm like, yes, but without nutrition, you won't see the results you want.
Well, I did an experiment, Shannon, and I did this.
You did?
I did. I stopped riding. I was probably riding less than 50 miles a week, which is doable for an average person. Like and maybe some weeks, 25 miles. I didn't want to stop completely. And I did this. It's not a diet. It's a nutritional approach by this guy, Dr. Gundry, called the Plant Paradox, that basically says no corn, no soy, which truthfully your body can't process. It's not a plant paradox. It's not this paleo thing that basically everybody winds up in ketosis, which is not sustainable. But for some people, I know everybody out there, there's a marathon runner, he lives on, that's like 5 standard deviations from the norm. Like, let's talk about,
right.
Let's talk about average normal
bringing up
human
statistics, Brandon.
Yeah. Like, let's talk about normal people here. That's just not going to work. And what I did, is I followed it, and it's something that you can live. I actually since that moment, I've tried to live in that. And I got down to 143 pounds. I didn't exercise as much. This is how, there's a friend of mine who's a special forces guy, the elite of the elite guy. So let's just say this guy, we'll give him the credit, right? He's a good friend of mine. And I picked him up from the airport and he said, Brandon, I don't want to be Metro or anything, but like you look amazing. Like, you have this glow, you have this like everything. What have you been doing? And I said, I got to tell you, John, I've been doing this thing, and it's a nutritional approach, and it's obviously worked. I haven't been this lean since like high school.
Wow.
I want to do it. And he did it. And he followed it just like I did. Same thing. He stopped swimming as much. He does more swimming and things like that. And he got lower than when he had trained, lower and stronger than he had done when he trained to go into this special mission force unit.
Wow.
So I think I'm only saying that to support your point. Like, you're not going to out exercise a bad diet. If you want abs, stop running. I'm not saying don't do exercise. I'm just saying it's all in your diet.
It's all in your diet. You're right. You cannot outrun a bad diet. And I think actually what people do is, and I wonder if this happened to your friend, I wonder if he was almost, when he was training really hard, I want like back for, what was it? Some special forces, something.
Yeah. It's a, like the most elite unit in the Army. I mean, it's hard. There haven't been that many people ever in it. And you gotta, the requirements are very hard in the training and all those things. So I'm just saying it's one of those things where you can't fool around.
Right,
It's
right.
not just the Ironman. It's like the Ironman for a year.
Right. Like intense. It's interesting that you say that, because my guess is that because what I alluded to earlier, results are made in recovery. And so what people do is they end up working out too intensely, and they actually end up regressing and not seeing the results that they could. So I almost wonder if that happened to him. I almost wonder if he was training too hard, and like if he had backed up a little bit, he actually would have seen better results. Like, because you said he, this last time he wasn't training very hard and he was just cleaning up diet and saw better results. And I see that. I mean, I've seen that happen in my body. Like, I used to work out every day, if not sometimes twice a day, and like intensely, like intense workouts. And I ate like almost nothing. Like I was just busy. So I wasn't doing it on purpose. Like I was just busy and whatever. And I think that not only did that jack up other stuff like my sleep and my mood and all of that stuff, but now I work out for less than I ever have in my life. I work out, all I do is my classes, and I work out, my classes are like 30 minutes. 30 minutes, Monday through Friday. I take the weekends completely off. I'll either walk or whatever, but I eat a lot cleaner during the week than I ever have. And I eat enough. And not only does my body not hurt like it used to, I used to have all this chronic pain, but my body physically looks like the most muscular than it's ever looked. I was thin back then, but I didn't, it's like you almost look healthier. Like it's hard to like describe. It's just like a look. So I do think that I always caution people when they're like, I need to work out every single day and I need to work out really, really hard every single day. And I say, maybe if you step back and if you do less, you could actually see better results. So it's a total shift, but not only do you save your body and save your joints, but you save more time in your life. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. So here's something. I read a book my biking coach had given me in my late 30s, and it's called Younger Next Year. It's mainly tuned towards men, but it's applicable to women. And I say it's tuned towards men mainly because it's written by two men. And I think that too many times men seem to want to write about women, which I think is okay, but we don't have your body, and it's completely different in almost every regard. I mean, you can like grow a human. We cannot do that.
What?
I mean, that's real, right? Like there's a lot of things going on there that, and I'm not saying that male doctors don't know that. All I'm saying is that sometimes you got to live that life to truly know it. But
yes, agreed.
What it talks about is that it's called Younger Next Year. I got no like interest in it other than what it was talking. And some of the stuff actually is old from a psychology standpoint. The neocortex and all this right left brain is actually completely wrong. The science has shown that the regions of the brain actually can do more than what they used to think, and this whole primitive brain and all this crap, which really blew my mind quite candidly. It's blown my mind.
I need to read this book. Yeah.
I'll give you another book by 7 essays that will blow your mind about it's a myth buster. And I have a master's in psychology, so I'm into all this. And it just blows your mind that this primitive brain, that's all fake. It was all, it's all been totally disproved by modern science that can measure it. Yeah, it's completely wrong.
Wow.
100% wrong. But that's like another 3-hour podcast, but or discussion. But importantly, along that way is, and I'm getting to something because this ties into something that you've said that I want to talk about. Well, one is I want to talk about the guilt of recovery days, which I suffer from immensely. But two is this point that what their whole premise is that really what happens in your body from a cell perspective and muscles, and they talk about it, is that when you start getting in your 40s and 50s and then 60 plus, you're getting these degenerative cells that are basically taking over your body, and you need to flush them with younger or actually new cells that are generated. So they recommend, and I've been doing this basically since my, I guess I got in my 40s. I was riding bikes, so it didn't matter, but they say 6 days of exercise, Shannon, for at least an hour a day and at least zone 2 to flush the old cells out with newer, younger cells that basically keep you from aging. So do you know anything about this, or this whole like theory about this?
That's fascinating. From like a cell perspective, that doesn't surprise me. I would love to like read that book, but the red flag to me is that, the repetition that you have through your body in exercise is what can damage your joints. And so is it a wash? Is it that we are potentially damaging our joints with the excessive repetition, and then, you are building more younger cells or whatever it is? So does that end up being a wash? And are you trading one problem for another? Are you trading potentially younger cells for more worn down joints? I mean, that would be my question with all of that.
Well,
I'm not saying it's not interesting for sure. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but that would be kind of my red flag.
So here's what they recommend. They actually recommend riding your bike because it's probably the lowest impact exercise known to man, other than what you teach now.
Yes.
I mean, seriously.
I would agree with that, but it's still thousands and thousands of repetition in the same motion. So, and it's like hinged forward. So you have that moment arm going through your back the whole time, and potentially compression and all of that stuff. So that is and I think that's like a big, I'm not saying biking is wrong, by the way.
I know. What you just described is absolutely fact. There's thousands of repetitions and you are leaned over. Like if you don't have a strong core, you're ruining your joints.
Yeah. And the strongest core can't protect from a certain amount of force that's beyond, what your body can tolerate. So it's like, I just was reading actually a study that being hinged flexed forward is like, it is something like 5 times more compression through your back than like being laying on your back. So if you're in that position, even if you're not using any weight for a long period of time, and then doing the repetitive hip flexion, what are the consequences to your body? Now, and that's always what I want to ask is like, what are the consequences and what are the rewards? So for some people, the rewards might outweigh the consequences, in that maybe the rewards are that cell turnover, and that's ultimately more important to you than maybe the health of your discs or whatever it might be. So I think like that's what makes exercise so fascinating. It's not black and white. It's like what you always have to analyze. What am I getting out of this? And what is this potentially taking from me?
And do you, one of the things I think is touching on your point that's really important is you can listen to me, you, 5 other people who might know what they're talking about. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is to analyze yourself and get in tune with your body, right?
Yes. And what's important to you? And I have people that say that I have runners, running is not my favorite activity from a biomechanical standpoint, but I have runners that tell me, look, this is my meditative time. And this is my time that helps my brain, and that helps the rest of my life. And I'm going to deal with a little bit of knee pain because that is more important to me. And I'm like, okay, great. Like you do it. Like I know that how many runners are like that. So that's a thing, that's real. And that doesn't mean that, they're bad and they need to stop immediately. It's like, just what's important to you. And I do know that so many people are like me, and that feeling good in their body is the most important thing to them. Like maybe they don't see exercise as meditative, or maybe they don't really even like exercising that much. They kind of want to just do the least amount for the biggest reward. And I'm like, okay, those are my people. And we'll have a little bit of fun and we'll laugh at ourselves while we're doing it. But yeah, I mean, I think you hit it the nail on the head. There's no demonizing any of this. Like, I don't think that's productive.
I think you're right. I think I exercise because of the mental space. I actually get more work done on my bike than I do other places. I am a type A person who needs to let his mind rest. And the best way that I've found, and for people, it may be yoga, it may be meditation, it may be the 6 other things. For me, it's to go up a hill where there is nothing else that can be on my mind but going up that hill, because I'm so tired, right? And I don't want to age. So I'm trying to fight that. Having said that, I found exactly what you said, which comes to my next question for you, which is, I used to lift like 6 days a week and I gained size and did all that stuff. In my 40s, I realized, ironically, that I was growing more than I ever had by lifting less and taking rest days. However, my question for you is that how do people like us, or do you recommend people like us deal? I heard you take the rest day, because here's what I just heard from you, which I love about you is, but by the same token, I knew that you had the same problem or same challenge, not problem, challenge that we all have, which is, you're like, yeah, I work out during the week. I rest on the weekends, I walk or whatever, but how do we deal with, like, even on my rest day is Monday, and yesterday I did 4 sets of sit-ups. I got this iron neck. I never seen it. Know if you've seen this iron neck machine, because I think my head weighs a lot and my neck hurts from my bike.
Big brain.
I don't know what it is. That you can talk to my wife offline and debate what that means. But and I did 4 sets of dumbbell presses, but that's my off day because there's something in my brain that's like, I just feel guilty. So do you have any advice about that?
Oh my gosh, like, you are so not alone with that. In that there is this guilt where, and again, I think that's conditioning from the fitness industry, that we need to train every day or we're not going to get to the results that we want. And listen, your muscles just don't work like that, because your muscles require a certain amount of time to heal and recover. So you can work out 6 days a week if you are intentional about your programming, and you are working chest and back on one day, and legs on another day, and the next day you're working core, and You're not working the same muscle groups 2 consecutive days, and you're really not working muscle groups more than 2 times a week. So, and maybe I like to say 1 time a week. Sometimes you could do 2 times a week. But your muscles have to have that recovery time, because what happens is, when you lift a weight and you create little tears in your muscle, because the weight gets too heavy that you can tolerate, the muscle physically tears and has a little micro injury, right? Your immune system swoops in to heal up that tissue, and the result is you have a stronger tissue. However, that process takes like 2, sometimes up to 7 to 10 days. So if we are interrupting that process by lifting the weight again in the same motion, doing the same exercise, and creating tears in a muscle that's trying to heal, it's like breaking open a scab before it's healed. And so it's just prolonging that immune system to fully run its course and create stronger muscle. So that's why people tend to either regress, like they'll get weaker because they spin in chronic inflammation, or they just won't see their muscles grow because they're not actually giving their body that full time to repair. So I think that's the problem. I think how we do it is that Monday through Friday, we work a different muscle group. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, I do recommend people move every day because motion is lotion. But I don't recommend a stressful workout on Saturdays and Sundays. So from a muscle standpoint or from like a systemic standpoint. So like, I don't want people to like go out and really stress their systems on a hard run or like taking a power yoga class. I mean, all of those things are stress to your system. So not only are you healing your musculoskeletal system, but you're healing your nervous system by not placing additional stress when you're trying to heal.
How long is the optimum? I mean, you gave a range, and now in my head, I'm like, so is it 48 hours? Is it 72 hours? Does it differ from my quad to my bicep, to my tricep, to my delt?
Depends on the amount of damage incurred. So I really think that like a scrape on your skin is a great way to think about this. If you have a small scrape, that could heal in a matter of just a few days. If you have a larger scrape, obviously it takes longer. So the more damage you create in your muscles, the harder your workout, the more time that will take to heal. As far as like size of muscles, like, your glutes are a larger muscle than your biceps. Do those take longer to heal? I'm actually not sure. I would say probably. Just that makes sense to me, like just because there's more immune tissue that needs to come in there and do its job. So I would say that maybe like bigger muscles take a little bit longer to heal. It also depends on genetics, and it also depends on sleep. Are you getting enough sleep? Because if you're not getting enough sleep, your immune system is distracted by being fatigued. Are you eating enough? Are you eating the right things? Are you hydrating enough? So all of those things will influence how quickly you heal. If you have amazing genetics, if you're sleeping enough, eating enough, drinking enough, I say like a max of, 2 days in between when you work a muscle.
That's fair. So you've fundamentally, really honestly, changed my workouts, and I didn't do too many straight bar exercises. I know a lot of people do straight bar exercises. I haven't, I love the squat. But the squat, be honest, in my later, I say maybe in my 20s, that was a cool thing, and how much weight you can do. Even I haven't benched in a really long time, but one thing that you did, I basically stuck to dumbbell and Nautilus exercises, which back in the Nautilus sort of, I don't know what you think or what you lived through, but Nautilus went through this thing when it first came out, at least in the bodybuilding, where it was like, that's it. Then it went through this thing, you'll never grow on a Nautilus. And then it sort of came back to dumbbells, and then it's sort of a hybrid now. But
Yeah.
what I'm talking about here is the individual reps. So normally people, even with dumbbells, will do both hands at once. And I think you did either a story or a post or your website.
Yes.
I can't remember. Can you talk about this effect and what it is? Because it's actually game changing.
Yes. Okay. So 2 things to discuss here. One is a phenomenon called bilateral deficit that we'll talk about. And then the second is I think you're kind of going down the idea of compound exercises versus more targeted exercises towards muscle groups. Okay. So we'll talk about bilateral deficit first. So bilateral deficit is this cool phenomenon with your nervous system where your nervous system can produce slightly more output, more muscular output when you're using one limb versus 2 limbs. So for example, you can lift more weight using one arm and a bicep curl than if you were to do both at the same time. Same thing with your legs. So like doing a lunge, you can produce more, slightly more output than you could if you were doing a squat with both of your legs on the ground. This has to do with your nervous system in the sense that your nervous system is really good at doing one thing at a time, and it's really crappy at doing multiple things at a time. So the more you can funnel down your focus and exercise, the more stable you will be, the less risky the exercise will be, and the more results you will get because your body will be able to dedicate all of its resources to the targeted muscle and produce the best output there. So pretty interesting there. And that feeds into the idea of these compound exercises using a bar. I mean, compound exercises, straight bar like comes to mind. So like overhead presses with a straight bar, squats, deadlifts, the curls. You have to use 2 arms or 2 limbs when you're using a straight bar for pretty much everything. So the idea is bilateral deficit plays into that, right? And then also, again, your nervous system just has a hard time doing a lot of things at once. So one of my issues with a squat is that not only are you, I mean, in a squat, you're basically trying to target the legs, but unintentionally, you have to stabilize every single vertebra in your spine, 24 vertebra. There's load coming down. Your body has to spread its resources thin to stabilizing your spine, stabilizing your hips, stabilizing your feet, stabilizing your knees. There's a lot that your nervous system has to do. So its resources are spread thin. So the output tends to plummet. The more that's going on in an exercise, the less benefit you will see. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of those compound exercises. I just think that the risk tends to be a little bit higher than the reward.
Yeah. And I'll just thank you, because it really did change. At least what I've found is on this bilateral deficit phenomenon, is that I can actually use less weight, but know that I'm getting more workout, or getting more workout. Is that a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. Getting better results.
I'm getting more results. Yeah. I'm getting more like,
muscular benefit.
Yeah. Like in biking, it's called watts, whatever. I'm putting out more energy per this exercise at a lower weight to get this desired result, which is ultimately strength and size.
That's a good analogy to think of it, like watts.
Well, that's how I don't know how to think of it. When someone says to me on the bike, like how much are you putting out? The only thing that we measure all sorts of things, but basically you can say heart rate, which just doesn't translate over to you, because my heart rate is different than yours. And I could have been dehydrated through this, 100 things are wrong with using. I'm not saying we use it as a gauge, but watts doesn't lie. My 100 watts is the same as your 100 watts. Now, yeah, what do we use? Like, what word do we use in lifting weights?
How I do it is I use, again, I try to standardize things by breaking it down from this biomechanical standpoint, and you can kind of calculate force. And this isn't like a perfect calculation, or this isn't like a perfect unit, but really because gravity comes involved, and there's lots of complicated things when you're calculating physics and force. But basically you can calculate inches per pound. So like how many pounds of force are produced per inch. So that's kind of how I calculate it, and how I standardize it, and it's just a way to compare two different exercises and compare how much force is going through this movement and how much force is going through this movement. And like watts, it's standard, right? It doesn't lie. It's math. You can't there's no subjectiveness. It's just like, it's black and white. It's there. So that's kind of how the measure that I've used to wrap your head around, like, how much stress is going through this joint, and do we want that or do we not want that?
Did we cover everything? I gave you the list beforehand. I think I was looking, I think we covered a lot, right?
I love it. You're so easy to talk to and have great questions. I'm so glad you invited me on.
Well, yeah, I'm excited. I was really excited about your whole approach that you have, and really just your journey. Like I love people. If it's not evident, I love online businesses for all the reasons we talked about. And I love exercise. And my whole thing with entrepreneurs is having done this entrepreneur thing for, I'm not that old, but I did it started early. It's been like 20, I started in 19, forget the lemonade stand. I started really everybody.
No, don't forget the lemonade stand. The most important lessons are learned then.
Yeah, mine was that, you need to know your market, because we lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere, and I sold zero. But the I think 1996 or whatever that is, but is that if you want to be an entrepreneur, and a true entrepreneur, and I say this, not everybody can be an entrepreneur. And I continue to say that online world thinks that you can lift weights, get big by not doing drugs. You can do all this crazy stuff, and that magically you're entitled to be an entrepreneur, which is absolutely not. It's not true. I find it insulting.
I do too. I do too.
I celebrate people like you who have transformed their business and are excited about it and like into it. Like you can see it on your Instagram. You're like, I sent you that note and I was like, man, I sent you that note about the audio mute panels and stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe she's going to be like, shut up, Brandon. I don't need your advice, but I was just really excited for you because I could see like, you're like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast and I got my mic and, I'm doing I think you're using GarageBand for that.
Yes. Is that what you
see
use?
you writing your notes and eventually you'll get where you don't have to, it's like, I can see in that journey and I just love it to
thank you.
See that success.
Thank you. It's so fun. It's so fun. I think like the biggest piece is just getting past the fear of being scrutinized and just being like, okay, this is what I know. There's going to be people that disagree with me, but on the same token, there are so many more people that I can actually help. And when you get past that, I think like that's what I've tried over the last 8 months to get past. And I've seen like, it just becomes so much more limitless, I think. So I'm having a blast.
Well, cool. Yeah. And to finish my thought, because my wife tells me that I say things, but then I finish them in my brain and then I move on and I don't say them.
I do the same thing. It's so bad.
It's terrible. It's actually terrible for your significant spouse, in my case, wife, in your case, husband, but
they become mind readers. They just start to figure it out.
Oh, not my wife. She's like,
oh no,
you need to finish your sentence because when you do that to other people, they think you're weird.
I didn't notice that. If it makes you feel any better.
Well, good. But for an entrepreneur, you got to have mind, body, and business. And if you do not, first of all, it's not going to be balanced. So anybody who says that is probably on drugs or lying or trying to sell you something that isn't good. But you do have to have that training your mindset, and it's not mindset. It's really just understanding yourself. And you've got your body, like, it's like what you were saying about fitness and lifting and losing weight. Like it's 80% in the diet. Being an entrepreneur I'm going to say it, you do the work, but 80% in your mind and your body, because without your body, you're just not going to get there.
I totally agree. I spend so much money on my mind. I will say so much money and time. What
does that mean?
I get coached. So I get coached. I spend a lot of time journaling and emptying my mind onto a piece of paper. I spend a lot of time like listening to podcasts where I can like learn and self-develop. I would say probably 20 hours a week on my own mind. And to me, that's a non-negotiable.
Oh, that's awesome. I just did a podcast on how a millionaire invests $1. And it touches on what you've just said. So if you haven't listened to it, I recommend it. And any listeners, you should recommend do it because it talks about investing in yourself.
Ooh, can't wait.
But that's like shameless promotion. But here, I want to offer you something only because I really have been in social media since 1996. You read my background, but I ran the largest social networking site for sport fishermen. And what I learned was that, and men can be, I don't want to judge who's meaner. Men and women are mean, and hurt people will hurt people.
Yes. Agreed.
But here's how and I think maybe this just comes with some age. Like I said, I'm not that old, but as you do get in these decades, you sort of get these moments. And here's how I look at it, Shannon, and I would offer you only because I know you said it earlier and I let it go, but you said something, you're like, all that bad stuff, it bothers me. And I know how that feels.
Yes.
And it can be a heavy weight that can totally screw your day. And it actually screws up everything. But here's how I see it. I think I am genuinely easily to talk to and a good person, and I'm not evil. And I think you are absolutely 100% the same thing.
Oh, thank you.
But there's like 9 billion people on this earth. Isn't there like 9 billion people?
9 billion. That sounds right.
Yeah. So statistically speaking, there is no way that everybody will like me or you. So I
Totally.
changed my whole expectation. Instead of saying, well, I want everybody to like me, and we want everybody to like us, not because we're defining our self-worth, but because we're putting ourselves out there, and we're like, how could someone be such a 4-letter word here when I'm trying to help? By the way, I'm giving it to you for free, which you're not entitled to. I'm doing that.
Thank you.
And you're going to shit all over me and like say something that I had a pimple on my head. Like, seriously, get over yourself.
I know.
But if you have the mindset that I actually believe, I actually know and accept that not everybody's going to like me. And as long as I'm not evil or haven't put my foot forward, that allowed me to release this. It's like you're wearing a backpack, and every day, like these 3 negative comments are weighing your back. You're carrying this around.
Yes.
So I just offer that. It's not an overnight solution, but if you can think about it that way and just say there's 9 billion people, of course, everyone's going to like me. And quite candidly, I actually don't like everyone either.
That's such a good point. And that's one of those things that is, like you said, you have to rewire your brain. Because I think we have, especially women, are wired to have everyone like them. I mean, that's how I grew up. And so rewiring that is like going to take a lot of practice. But thank you for saying that, because I think there is some level of freedom, like knowing that, oh, if I just think 50% of people are going to hate me and not like me, like, okay, cool. Then when it happens, I'm like, oh yeah, I expected that. I knew that was coming. Like, no big deal. I love that. Thank you.
Life is about expectations, but I want to thank you for your time, but I don't want to go because I prepared you for the 3 HPTs that you would give, high percentage tips that you would give people about their fitness and approach to live in a better, healthier life.
Yes. Okay. 3 tips. Lift the weights slowly and smartly. Recover properly. And I think the third would be to work on loving yourself more every day. That would be my 3.
Well, that's a good one. That one sounds like a full podcast unto itself.
I know it really could be multiple.
But thanks a lot. How can people find you?
So I have a fitness platform called Evlo Fitness, EVLO fitness.com. You could check that out. There's a free 7-day free trial. Instagram, Dr. Shannon, dr.shannon.dpt. Dr. Shannon DPT. And then my new podcast is Fit Body, Happy Joints.
And how many days a week are you doing your podcast?
Just one right now. That's all I can do.
That's all you should do to start. So listen, Thank you so much. You are super busy. Congratulations on your business. And thank you for sharing all of these tips just to live a healthier, not pain-free, but do less damage to your joints life.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. It was a blast. Thank you for having me.
There we go.